If you are passionate about improving your JavaScript by building projects, then you are in the right place. In this video, we are going to build a simple to-do application using JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. Before we dive into today's exciting content, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our amazing videos. With this one being said, let's look at the live demo before we get into code. We have the form here at the left side, and this is where you're going to see the list of to-dos. And for this project, we are going to perform what is called CRUD operation, which means create, read, update, and delete. I'm going to add one more task, which is called prepare a presentation, and this is my description, and then add. And indeed, it has been added, which is this one, and I can go ahead and also edit this one. I'm gonna add version 2 and then add, and as soon as I do that, it has been updated and I can go ahead and delete. As you can see, I can delete a task. So this is what we are going to build. We are going to write both the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript from scratch. But in case you want to focus mainly on the JavaScript, then you can use the timestamps below the video to navigate to the JavaScript section. With this one being said, let's get into code. First step is that I'm going to have a folder called To Do, and I'm going to open it using my preferred code editor, and that is Visual Studio Code. Alright, so let's begin with the UI or the structure first before we implement the JavaScript. If you look at the final one, we have an icon and some Google fonts. So back here, we're going to have the folder structure. The first one is going to be index.html, and then the style are styles.css, and then the JavaScript as script, or let me call this one as app.js. You can name it whatever you want, but mostly we use app when using Express or Node.js, but the naming is up to you. So back to the HTML, let's have the skeleton by pressing Shift exclamation mark or 1 and then hit enter. For the title, I'm gonna call this one as Todo App. And then let's bring in the icons, and that is Font Awesome. You're gonna search for Font Awesome CDN and then click on that, or better still, you can go to cdnjs.com, and then what we want is the first one that ends with all.main.css, and click on this icon. Back to our code. In the head tag, I'm gonna place it here. I'm gonna call this one as Font Awesome, and then paste that. And the next step is going to be the Google font. So let's search for Google font, which is this one. And let me clear my previous ones. Alright, so let me browse fonts. You're gonna search for Inter, which is this one, and you can use any font of your choice. And get embedded code. Click on the link and click on the copy. Back to our HTML, I'm going to have a comment as Google font, and the name is called Inter, and then paste. Let me open this one in the browser by right clicking and click on open with live server. In case you don't have the extension, then make sure to install what is called live server, which is this. After installing, just right click and then open with live server. And let's look at the preview. And to make sure that the Google font and then the Font Awesome are loaded, let's open our console by clicking on inspect, and then let's click on the network and then click on the all, and let's reload. And as you can see, we have the Google font, which is equal to Inter, with a status code equal to 200, and then the Font Awesome CSS, which means that they have been loaded successfully. So back to the structure, let me remove all these opening tabs and let's focus on the HTML. So let's look at the structure for the final one. We are going to have a container, which is this one, and this container is going to contain both the form and then the list of to-dos. Therefore, I'm going to provide a container. So in the body here, I'm going to show you what is called a method syntax. In case you want to add a class to a div, just bring in dot or period and then the name of the class. I'm going to call this one as container and then enter. With this one, we have the autocomplete, and then let me have a comment as sidebar. And this is the sidebar I'm referring to, which is this one, and this is what we call the main content. So back here, I'm going to have the main content also as that. Let's begin with a sidebar. With a sidebar, I'm going to give it a class as dot sidebar. And then in between, you're going to have the icon and then the title. I'm going to bring in H1. I'm going to say that Taskmaster Pro. And in the H1, we are going to include the icon. So if you go to Google and search for Font Awesome, not this one, but the official website, and that is fontawesome.com. In here, you can use any icon of your choice. So click on the icons and then the free ones, which are these. And you can use any icon of your choice. Or what you need to do is to click on the icon, for example, this, and then select the HTML and click on that, copy. And then back here, just paste. And let's look at the preview. And we have it. But what I want is something like this. So the name of that icon is called FAS space FA dash task. Alright, and we have something like that. So it's time for us to add the form, which is this one. So back here, and that is in the sidebar, I'm going to have a div with a class called input-section. Within that, we're going to have the input field with a type equal to text and then ID, which is equal to do title. I'm using the ID here because you want to use JavaScript to select the value from the input field at the same time for styling. And then I'm going to provide a placeholder. I'm going to say that what's your next big task. And then after that, we're going to provide the description as text area. And with this, I'm going to remove the name. For the ID, you can use a class or ID. So for this, I'm going to call this one as to do description. And then placeholder, I'm going to say that add details about your task. And lastly, the button to click on. And I'm going to call this one as create task. A class equal to btn. And then ID, which is equal to add btn. I'm going to use JavaScript to select the ID, or I can use the class. And lastly, let me provide an icon as I with a class equal to FAS FA dash class. This one is from Font Awesome, and this is what we have. And we are done with the sidebar. We're going to use the CSS to control it to have something like this. So let's focus on the main content. I'm going to provide a div with a class which is equal to main content. And then I'm going to provide the title as your task overview, which is, I'm going to provide it with a class equal to header. And then in between, I'm going to have h2. I'm going to say that your task overview. And the next step is let's have the container for the actual task. After the header, I'm going to provide a comment as to do list container. If you're curious about my comment, I have installed an extension called Beta Comment. And with this one, I can change the color of my comment. And since I used what is called to do, that is why I got this color. So don't worry about this. So below here, you're going to have the container that's going to wrap the entire to-do list. So in here, I'm going to have a div with a class equal to card, and then space to do dash item. And you may need this one for both the styling and for JavaScript. Well, before this, let me cut it and then wrap it inside what is called to-do list. And for this, we're going to use an ID, therefore hashtag, and then the name of the ID as to-do list, and then hit enter. And this is going to wrap the entire list of the to-dos. And this is where we are going to insert the to-do dynamically using JavaScript. So I'm going to say that to-do items will be dynamically added here. And let's add the to-do manually. I'm going to say that add to-do manually. When we get to JavaScript, we are going to add it dynamically. At the moment, let's add it manually by providing the title, the description, the status, and then the actions. I'm going to have a div that's going to wrap the individual items. So in here, with a class equal to card, and then space to do dash item. In here, we're going to have the content, and that is the title, and then the description. So I'm going to say that dot to do dash content. And then for the content, we have the h3. I'm going to call this one as task title, will be here. And then the description as p as task description. And then below it, we're going to have the status by using a span. I'm going to call this one as pending. And let me provide a class equal to status, and then space status dash pending. And let's look at the preview, and this is what we have. And the last step is going to be the actions with the edit and then with the delete. After the content, let me collapse, and then below here, I'm going to call this one as actions. And I'm going to wrap it in a div by using to do dash actions. And let's have a button, and inside I'm going to provide a class, and that is the icon instead. And by using a class which is equal to FAS FA dash edit. Let's have a look, and we have the edit icon. And for the class for the button, I'm going to provide btn, and then edit dash btn, and copy and paste for the other button for the delete, FAS FA dash trash. Alright. So I can say that we are done with the HTML. What has left is going to be the CSS. So let's link up the CSS. I'm going to link it here as custom CSS. And by using link and then styles.css. So let me open the CSS. The first step is we have to reset, and let's provide base styles. For the reset, we're going to use the universal selector by saying margin is equal to 0. With this one, we don't have any margin around the content. And then padding is also equal to 0. And let's provide box sizing, which is equal to border box. Let me explain what is the box sizing, which is equal to border box. This is a CSS property that changes how the total weight and height of an element is being calculated. By default, the box sizing is equal to content box. Without the border box, the weight and height you specify only applies to the content only, and padding and border are added on top of the specified weight or height. That is why we brought in what is called the border box. And then let's move on to the body. For the body, we're going to specify the font family that we specify, and we used what is called Inter. If you check in the Google font here, this is how we can use it. By providing the name of the font as Inter. Let me copy that, and then back here, I'm going to replace with that. We have the Inter and then sans serif. And this is what we call the fallback. This means in case this font is not available, then it should fall back to the sans serif. And let's provide the line height. If I say the line height is equal to 20, let's look at the differences now. And we have the spacing between the content. Let me change back to 2. And as you can see, the spacing between them, and then the font family has been applied. Let me change this one to 1.5, even 1.6 instead. And then let's provide the background color by using hashtag 050B2C. And then color by using hashtag 6Fs. And let's have a look. Nice. The next part is going to be the container layout. Note that this is a container that wraps everything. So let's select the container, and note that it's a class. Therefore, we're going to use .container. And for the container, let's provide the maximum weight of 1200 pixels. And let's see, nice. If I give it a background color of say red, let's see the container, as you can see that. And let's provide what is called margin. For top and bottom is 0, and left and right is auto. And padding, provide 2 rem. And I'm going to use display equal to grade. And in case you are not familiar with grade, with the display equal to grade, it's going to create 2-column layout. And that is, if you look at the final one, this is going to create 2 layouts. The sidebar here, and then the main content. After that, we're going to provide what is called grade template columns. I'm going to use 300 pixels and then 1 FR. And FR stands for fraction of remaining space. So this one is going to take up all the remaining available weight, and this one will grow and shrink dynamically as the viewport changes. And this one is commonly used for main content area, as you can see for the final one. With this one, the sidebar is going to take 300, and the remaining is going to be dynamic. And let's provide a gap, and that is a space between the columns as 2 rem. And let's have a look. As you can see, the spacing here. And indeed, it has been aligned perfectly, as you can see on the screen. Let me remove the background. Alright. And let's focus on the sidebar, which is in the container. Let's target the sidebar, which is this one. So back here, dot sidebar, and I'm going to provide a background color by using RGBA color. For the red is equal to 255, green 255, blue 255, and then the alpha channel as 0.1, and that is the opacity. Nice. The more I increase the opacity, the more opaque it's going to be. It ranges from 0 to 1. So here I'm going to use the 0.1. And let's have border radius. And let's give it as 16 pixels. After that, let's provide a padding of 1.5 rem. And then the backdrop filter, I'm going to use blur. And then 10 pixels. Let me explain this syntax. And this is a CSS property that is going to create a frosted glass or glassmorphism effect on the sidebar. If you look at the final one, as you can see, that glassmorphism effect is because of this, and that is a backdrop filter, which is equal to blur, and then pass in the blur value as 10 pixels. And then the height for the sidebar, we're going to use the calc function. We're going to pass in 100 VH minus 4 rem. Let me explain this one also. let's have some space as that. Alright, so let me explain this syntax, and that is height equal to calc and then 100 VH minus 4 rem. This is going to calculate dynamic height of an element. The 100 VH here represents the viewport, and that is a visible area of the browser window, and 4 rem here is a unit based on the root font size, and that is if the font size is 16 pixels, then 4 rem is equal to 64 pixels. And the calc here is a function that performs the mathematical operations. So for this one, it's going to make the sidebar take up the full height of the viewport and then subtract 4 rem to account for the padding, and that is 2 rem top plus 2 rem bottom. And this one ensures that the sidebar fits perfectly within the visible area without creating unwanted scroll bars. And let's provide position as sticky. You want it to be fixed at that point, and then top provide 2 rem, and then border I'm going to give it as 1 pixel solid, and I'm going to use the RGBA color and 0.1, and let's have a look. And this is what we have. As you can see, the glassmorphism effect, and this is because of the backdrop filter. The next part is going to be the content area, which is the main content. So back here, dot main content with a background, provide RGBA, and for the opacity, let's use 0.5, and then border radius of 16 pixels, and then padding of 2 rem, and then border 1 pixels solid RGBA, and let's have a look. Nice. I think for the background it is 0.05, and indeed we have a border around the main content. If I increase this one to 10 and we have this effect, you can maintain this or you can change to 1. It is up to you. The next part is going to be the header, which is this one. So back to the HTML, this is the H1, and we forgot to wrap it in a div with a class equal to header. So I'm going to cut everything from here and use dot header and then paste that. So we are going to select the H1 to style. But before that, let's style the header. So back here, dot header, let's give it margin bottom of say 2 rem, and padding bottom also 1 rem. And if you look at the final one, we have this underline. This is where border bottom comes in as 1 pixel solid RGBA, and the opacity you're gonna use 0.1. And let's have a look, and we have this underline. And let's style the H1. So back to the HTML, we are going to select the header and then the H1. It's going to be as header space H1, and then in here font size of 1.8 rem, and color we're gonna use, and then display equal to flex. We want to align it perfectly, and we're gonna use align items as center, and let's have some space as gap, which is 0.5 rem. And this is what we have. Let's also style the icon. So in here is equal to dot header space H1, and then the I for the icon, which means we are doing what is called nesting. We targeted the container, the H1, and then the I tag. So here I can give it a different color of, say, what about this color? Alright, it is up to you. And let's also style the H2, which is this one. And note that we have both been underlined because we have two divs that has a class equal to header. If you look at the sidebar header, it has a class equal to header, And then for the main content, it also has a class equal to header. That is why we got both being underlined. So back to the CSS, we're gonna style the h2, and it goes like this. They all have .header space h2. We are targeting this one, and let's give it a color as hashtag 7fs or 6fs, and then font size of 1.5 rem. And let's style the button, and that is a btn, which is this. So .btn, and it goes like background color, and I'm gonna use this color, and then the actual color, this color, and then padding top and bottom as 0.8 rem, and then left and right as 1.5 rem, and then border you're gonna use none, and then cursor as pointer. And apart from pointer, you also have crosshair, and as you can see the effect. Let me bring back to pointer, and then font size of 0.9 rem, and then font weight of 600, and transition, which is equal to all the properties at this timing 0.2 seconds, and the effect is called ease. And then width is equal to 100%. Alright, don't worry, we're gonna control it. And on hover.btn hover, we're gonna change the background color to hashtag, and transform, we're gonna translate. On the y-axis, it should move up to 2 pixels as -2, and as you can see, the cool effect. And let's style the icon in the button. Therefore, you're gonna target .btn space and then the I tag, margin right of 0.5. Alright, we have some spacing between the icon and then the text. And let's target the input section, which is this one. I'm gonna select the class dot input section, display equal to flex, direction you're gonna use column, want it to be on top of each other, and the gap as 1 rem. Alright, this is what we have. And then let's select the input, comma, and then the text area. We're gonna style them at a go, provide a width of 100%, and then padding on all sizes as 1 rem, and then background as RGBA, and I'm gonna use 0.05, and then border is equal to 1 pixels, solid RGBA, 0.1 opacity, and border radius of 8 pixels. And the color, I'm gonna use a white color, and font size of 0.95 rem. And this is what we have. And let's apply this cool effect. If you look at the final one, when it gets focused, as you can see the border color, you want to apply that. So back here, you're gonna select both the input and then colon focus, comma, text area, colon focus. We want to apply the following as outline. We're gonna use none. Border color, you're gonna use the hashtag, the 09, and then box shadow. Gonna use 000 and then 2 pixels, solid RGBA. The opacity, you're gonna use 0.2, and change this one to 165 and then 9. And let's have a look, and we have that cool effect. Let's also change the color in the placeholder, and this is how we can do it. Bring in input, colon, and then placeholder. I also want to apply the same style to the text area as colon, placeholder. And I'm going to apply color. If I change this one to yellow, as you can see the color of the placeholder, and let me change back to something like this. It is up to you how you want it. So the next part is going to be the actual card. So if you look at the individual item, we have the div that wraps the individual to-do item. So let's target the card class. So here as .card, and then provide background and then border radius of 12 pixels, padding of 1 rem, and then border solid RGBA 0.1 opacity, and then transition all the properties 0.2 seconds, and it is ease. And let's have a look. And this is a card container, and on hover we want to animate by using the card and then colon hover. On hover, I want to translate, that is transform, translate on the y-axis, and I'm going to give it as 10 pixels, and let's have a look. As you can see, that cool effect. We can change this one to x-axis, and as you can see, the cool effect. But let's maintain the y-axis and change this one to 2 pixels. And when it got translated, let's change the border color to RGBA, something like this. It's supposed to be RGBA, and as you can see, that cool effect. And let's target the to-do content, which is this one that wraps the actual content of the to-do. So .that, and then I want to select the H3, which is the task title, and change the color to and margin bottom of 0.5 rem and font size of 1.2 rem, and let's have a look. Nice. The next part is going to be the actual content as .to-do content, and then P, the color is equal to RGBA, change this one to 0.7, and then margin bottom of 1 rem and font size of 0.95 rem. And let's target the status and then the status pending. So .status, I'm going to give it as display equal to inline block, and then padding top and bottom as 0.25 and left and right as 0.75, and border radius of 20 pixels, font size of 0.85, and then font weight 500. Cool, this is what we are styling. And on status.pending, and that is dash pending, we are selecting the pending. Then I'm going to give it a background color of RGBA 165 0.2, then color, give it as this, and there we go. I can give it as margin bottom of say 5 pixels, and we have the spacing between the button and then the status. Let's also style the to-do actions, and that is the buttons. So .that display equal to flex. Alright, now we can control it by having gap 0.25, and then margin top have some space as 1 rem. Nice. And let's target the button itself as to-do actions.btn, which is for the both the edit and then the delete. So here as .to-do actions.btn, provide a width of auto. With this one, let's have a look. Nice. And then padding top and bottom as 0.5 and then left and right as 1 rem. Now let's target the edit one as .edit-btn. Give it a background color of RGBA 0.1. Cool, because both have what is called the edit btn and then edit btn, and then the color as white. Nice. And on hover .edit btn :hover, change the background color to RGBA. Instead of 0.1, it is equal to 0.2, which means that we want to increase the opacity. And let me style the delete btn. Let me check it out here. It is called, this one's supposed to be delete btn. Sorry guys. Alright, so delete btn. We want to give it a different color as color, which is equal to hashtag FF3B30, and then background RGBA, use the 0.1. Nice. And then on hover, copy that, :hover, remove this. I just want to change this one to 5.9. And the last step is going to be the responsive design. It's going to be pretty simple by using @media and then use the max-width and then use 768. At this breakpoint, bring colon here. At this breakpoint, we want to change the container to use the gray template columns to 1 as 1 fr, and that is fraction. And then the sidebar sidebar, change the height to auto, and then position equal to static. And that is it. So let me reduce the browser window, and as you can see, it is responsive. We are done with the styling. It is time for us to focus on the JavaScript. So let's look at the logic behind this one, and this is the flow. Instead of us manually providing the task here, we are going to use JavaScript. So we are going to remove, in the HTML, I provided a content called how to do manually here, and this is the item. So we are going to use JavaScript to create these elements of the task, and then we can insert the data in the individual task. And it's all what we are going to do using JavaScript. Back to the JavaScript. I have a file called app.js. You can name it whatever you want, but I prefer to maintain this name. So let's link it in our HTML, and we're going to do it below the HTML, and that is before the closing tag of the body. I'm going to say custom JavaScript, and I'm going to use the script and use the RCC, which is equal to app.js. And to confirm that it has been linked successfully, I'm going to use alert. I'm going to say that connected to HTML. This is just to confirm that our JavaScript has been linked to the HTML, and I got this message, so I can now remove it. Let's look at the process involved when building projects using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So first step is that look at the nature of your project, and you ask yourself the process involved. First step is that a user will provide the to-do, for example, coding, and then the description, I'm going to say code for the day. So at this point, we know the first step, and that is allowing the user to provide this data. And what next? The second step is that when a user clicks on the create here, we are going to take these values and then process it. And where are we going to process it? We are going to process it in the JavaScript and then save it into local storage. And local storage is a mechanism that allows us to save data into the browser, and upon reload, the data will still be persisted. And this is what we are going to use. To visualize the local storage, right click and then inspect. And then click on the application. We have these storage mechanisms. One is local storage, session storage, IndexedDB, cookies, and others. But we are going to use the storage. And this is a link. As you can see here, for me, I have some data that has been saved into the local storage. So to clear it, right click and then click on clear. Now with this one, I have nothing here, and this is where we are going to save the data. And that is when a user click on the create, we are going to take what the user is providing here and then save it here. So at this point, we know the input fields or the elements that are going to be affected. The first one is going to be the input field and then the description. And from there, we will need to select the button and lastly to display it. And in case we want to edit, then we're going to click on this one and for delete. This means we're going to select this element, the input, and that is 1, 2, 3, the title 4, description 5, and then edit 6, and then delete 7. This means we're going to select all these elements in the JavaScript. So back to the JavaScript here, before we select, we want to make sure that both the HTML, the CSS, and then the JavaScript and then the icons are loaded before using JavaScript to interact with those elements. This is where an event which is called DOM content loaded comes in. So I'm going to use document.add event listener, and the event type here is called DOM content loaded, and then the callback function as that. And this function is going to make sure that all the assets are loaded. So we're going to write our code inside here. So the first step is that we need to select all the elements that are going to be affected. So first step is going to be the to-do title, which is this ID. So back here, I'm going to use document.getElementById because we use what is called ID here. And then provide the name of the ID as to-do title. Let me assign to a variable as to-do title. You can name it whatever you want. You can append even element at the end. It is up to you. After that, let's also select the description. Description, if you confirm, we have it as to-do description. And then the button to click on, and that is the add btn. So change this one to add btn. And then where we want to list the to-dos, and that is the to-do list here. We are going to use JavaScript to create this element and then insert the content dynamically. So I'm going to select that one also as to-do list. Now that we have selected the element, the next step is that we need to load to-dos from local storage. That is the second step, because we want to add the new to-do and save it into local storage. And this is how we can do it. We're going to use what is called LocalStorage.getItem. And that is, if we want to get something from the local storage, we're going to use getItem and then pass in the placeholder. I'm going to use to-dos. I'm going to use this one upon saving into local storage. So in case you don't have the to-dos, then I'm going to use empty array. I'm going to assign to a variable as to-dos equal to that. But we have one more step to load data from local storage. What we have saved into local storage, we want to convert it back to an object. This is where a method which is equal to json.parse comes in. So I'm going to cut everything from here and use json.parse as a function. Then in the parentheses here, I'm going to paste that. And this is how we can convert JSON data into object. Now that we have the data that has been loaded from the local storage, we have to insert it into the DOM. So now if I log the to-dos here, you're going to see empty data. If I open the console and then reload, we have unexpected JSON data, line number 9. Oh, sorry, this one is supposed to be outside. Yeah, this one. All right. And we have empty array. Before we continue, we are going to add new data into the local storage. In here, we are going to have a function to add new to do and save into local storage. So to do that, we're going to have a function for that as function add to do. And I'm going to use normal function here. So the first step is that we need to get what a user is providing in the input field. And note that we have already selected as to do title. So in here, I'm going to say that const title is equal to the to do title dot value. Dot value is going to help us to get what a user is providing in the input field. And you want to remove any white spacing. This is where dot trim comes in. This means that we want to sanitize what a user is providing. For example, a user can provide something like this, space, 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 and then enter, and then space, 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 and enter. We want to remove this white spacing. And this is where this function or this method comes in. All right. The next step is going to be the description. You also want to get the description, and that is to do description. And we have already selected it here and change this one to description. All right. And let's perform these checks. A user might not provide a data and the user want to click on the create. You want to prevent that. So in here, we are going to call this function if and only a user has provided a title. Then we're going to take the to-dos here and then push the new one into it. This is where to-dos dot push. And what are we pushing? We're going to push an object because we have title and then the description. So use title, and that is a property, and the value is equal to the title here, and then comma description. We're going to use the description. We are providing our custom property here as title and then the description, and then we have the value that we want to push into, and that is the description here and then the title here also. And according to year 6, and that is new feature in JavaScript, if you have a property and the value having the same name, you can choose to maintain one. So this one is the same as this. So let's simplify it to have something like this. And after pushing, we want to empty the form. This is where to do title dot value is equal to empty string. This means we are removing the data in the input field or the form, which is also equal to empty string. We are going to call this function when the user click on the add to do. So we are going to select the button, and lucky for us, we have already selected the add btn. So we're going to add the event on that, and that is add btn dot add event listener. The event type here is equal to click. And then the callback function, we're going to use the function that we have created, and that is add to do. All right, so moment of truth. I'm going to log the to-dos here, and that is in the function to add the to-dos. So let me open the console. I'm going to say coding and then coding here as well. Let me place the console at the right side here. All right, and then add. And now, as you can see, the to do here, but this to do has only been saved into local storage. So even if I reload, I will see empty array. All right, so it's time for us to save this to do into local storage, and we can save it here as save into local storage. And it goes like this: local storage dot set item. And that is, if you want to save something into local storage, you're going to use the set item. And you're going to provide the property here is equal to to-dos. And what you want to save is the to-dos, which is this, because at this point here, we are pushing the new to-do into the existing one, and that is this one. Therefore, let's try out. But before saving, unless you convert to JSON, this is where JSON.stringify comes in. I'm going to place it inside. So now let me open the local storage. We have empty data. This time around, if I add, for example, coding, and then some coding, and then create, as you can see here that it has been saved. I can include more as eating and cook some food and then create. And now let's see, we have two to-dos, coding and then eating. So it's time for us to fetch this data into the form. And this is where one of my students asked me how to fetch data from the local storage and then display it on the page. And the student who asked me this question is called Amankona. He's a very serious student. So watch out as I'm going to show you how you're going to display this data into the page. To have some separation of concern, we are going to have a function for that. And note that we have the to-do list here. So back to the HTML, as I spoke about, we are going to use JavaScript to insert this HTML, but instead of the static data here, you're going to use the data from the local storage. Therefore, you're going to use JavaScript. So let me show you how we're going to do this one. So back here, and that is below the loading from the local storage. This is where we are going to render the to-dos. I'm going to have a function called render to-dos. And it goes like this: function and render to-dos. The main purpose for this function is to insert HTML with dynamic data. So here you're going to take the to-do list here as to-do list dot inner HTML. This means you're going to insert this HTML into the page, which is this one where we have this content. So here I'm going to select and then delete that. Once again, we are going to use JavaScript to insert the to-dos here. So back to the JavaScript here, we are going to insert what I have copied into the HTML. So here, before doing that, we are going to loop through and then insert the HTML. This is where map comes in. We're going to use the to-dos from the local storage and then .map. We're going to pass in a callback function, and we have access to the individual to-do and then the index. Note that this is an array and they have the index at 0 and 1. And we can access this index as a second argument to the map, and that is a callback function. And then bring backtick and then paste the HTML that we have copied. So we are going to call this function as soon as it got loaded. So I'm going to call it here as render to-dos. Now this one, as you can see, we have it as that. Let me save this one. And we have the content, even though I have removed the HTML from here, but we are using JavaScript to insert the data into the DOM. And note that we have selected the container, and that is a to-do list here. So back here, we are inserting the HTML into it. But instead of using this static data here, we are going to use the dynamic data. So I'm going to remove this one for the title, and to insert the dynamic data, we're going to use the $ curly braces and use to-do.title. Note that for each of the to-dos, we have the title as that, and as soon as I do that, as you can see, I have it as that. I can include more. Let me call this one as playing game or playing FIFA, and then add. If I reload, I have it, but I want to see the data as soon as I add. This is where this logic comes in. This means we're going to call this function as soon as we add new data into the DOM, which is this one. So in here, I'm going to call the render to-dos because this is going to fetch the data from the local storage and then display it on the page. I'm going to call this one as swimming, and let me use some dummy data here. And as soon as I do that, as you can see that I got the data on the fly. Alright, so this is how we can add. The next one is going to be the description. So in here, remove this and use the $ curly braces to do .description, and we have the red data as that. And what has left is going to be the edit and then the delete. For this, we're going to use what is called inline event handling, but as you can see, we have these commas here and that. The issue here is that when using map, we need to join. So after the curly braces of the map, bring .join, and what are we joining? We're going to join with empty string as a function, and then use the empty string. So for the deleting, we are going to bind an event listener into that. So for the delete, this is how we can apply an event listener. For this one, we are not going to use what is called the add event listener. We can do that, but let me show you a different approach. For this, I'm going to pass in what is called onClick. And this is how we can bind an event to an element which is equal to, and then the name of the event or the function that we want to call upon clicking on this link or on this button. The function that we are going to call is called the delete to do. This is supposed to be edit. So here as edit, by placing it in double quotes and say edit to do. At the moment, this function doesn't exist, and I'll show you how we are going to create it as a function call. And for this function, we're going to take in the index of the to do so that we can delete or we can edit. So in here, to pass in the index, we're going to use the $ curly braces, and we can get it from the function as index. And we can access the index in the function here, and that is it for the map. So we're going to have, I'm going to copy this. For the delete, we are binding the event. So this is going to be as delete to do, and we're going to pass in the index. So how are we going to implement the edit? Let me begin with the delete. It's going to be simple one. So in here, I'm going to collapse this one. Likewise, the add to do. Below here, I'm going to say delete to do. And we are going to add the function to what is called the window object. Now here is a clue. We want to access this function in the JavaScript. Therefore, you're going to bind the event to what is called the window. If I console.log the window here, let's have a look. And console, the window represents everything on the page, and we can add our function to the window. At the moment, we have used only the document, and that is window.document. If I look through, I will see the document, which is this one, as you can see here. So instead of using window.document, we can just use document because this is a global object. So this time around, we're going to add our event to that. So if I say that window dot, let me say email is equal to this function. So if I log the window, I'll be able to see this function being added to the window object. So if I reload and check the window, let me locate E for email, and this is my custom function that I have added to the window. So with this one, we can access it in the HTML because it is in the global scope. So back here, instead of doing this, we are going to add the function called .delete to do, which is equal to callback function. And the name of this is the same as the one that we have specified in our HTML, which is the, let me see, it is the add to do, not this one, but the render. So because of the window, we can access that function here as delete to do because we have binded to the window object as that. So how can we delete? First of all, we are going to pass in the index, and that is a to-do index that we want to remove. So in here, I'm going to remove the to-do at the specified position, and that is the index. This is where the array of to-dos dot splice. Splice is going to use to remove an item, and we want to start from the to-do index, and we're going to remove only one item, and that is it. After removing, we have to update the UI because we have made changes. This is where the render to do's function comes in. So this time around, if I remove this and then click on the coding here, as you can see, it has been removed. The next one is going to be the edit. For the edit, it's going to be the same process by adding to the window object as edit, and it goes like this: window dot edit to do is equal to this function or the callback, and we want the index as the to do index. And to be able to edit, first of all, we want to get a to do we want to edit using its position in the list. So in here, I'm going to say const to do to edit, which is equal to take the to-dos, and that is the to-do array, and then I want what I want to delete, and that is the to-do index. This is how we can access data in an array. And next step is that we are going to fill the input field with the to-dos current values. If you look at the final one, if I click on the to-dos, as you can see here that we have pre-filled into the form. If I change this one to version 2, and create, as you can see that it has been updated. So we want to pre-fill the form. This is where this logic comes in. So in here, we're going to fill the input fields with the to-do's current values. So here, I'm going to take the to-do title dot value, and then I'm going to assign what we have already as to-do to edit dot title. And then I want to fill the description as to-do description dot value. We're going to use the dot description. In case we don't have it, we're going to use empty string. Likewise, let's use empty string. And last step is that we need to remove from the list of to-dos. This is where to-dos dot splice. And splice is going to take in the index of the to-do that we want to remove, and going to pass in the index as to-do index and remove only one. After that, we want to update the to-dos. Note that this function requires the index, and we can get the index from where we are rendering, and this where we are passing in the index, likewise the edit. So with this one, reload, and then edit, we have it. This one is the original one, but I want this one. Click on edit. As you can see here that it has been filled. If I say version 2 and then create, as you can see here that it has been updated. Change this one to some description and then create, and now it worked. I can also delete, and it worked. Alright guys, so here ends this project. In case you are new to JavaScript, this one will look confusing, but don't worry. Take your time and go through and ask questions, and I'll be there to assist you. Catch you up in my next project.